Let's talk about the Edmonton Oilers then for a second, shall we? It's a natural segue because the Oilers have really struggled in the last number of years, even though they've got Connor McDavid and they got Leon Draisaitl. I want, for the benefit of our listeners here, I want you to listen. This is about just under 90 seconds. This is Connor McDavid on the podium Saturday night. Remember, the Oilers had a 3-1 lead after 40 minutes against Ottawa. Looked like they had the game completely in hand, and then Ottawa scores 5 times in the third period to come back and defeat Edmonton 6-4. So I'm curious, and Dom, maybe I'll start with you. When the best player in the NHL, the face of the franchise, sounds so vacant and despondent, what's your sort of initial reaction and takeaway from that?
It feels like he knows he's on a group project where he's doing all the work, and he still knows that the project is going to fail. And I feel like it's a relatable feeling for some people because he's doing his part. He's doing his best. It's just when you're the best player in the league and that's still not good enough, that points to what they've built around you. And I think 2 years ago, I think he and Ken Holland had a conversation, and he told them that it'll take give me 2 years, and we'll figure this bad boy out. And they have made things apparently worse. At the same time, it just really feels like the Oilers have been pretty unlucky recently. Like, they outplayed the Senators. They just didn't get the goaltending. They couldn't score as many goals as they needed to. It's tough. I do think the Oilers are a lot better than this. They can probably turn around, but they need some sort of spark that they're just not getting right now.
Yeah, and I feel like when was the last time the Oilers made a really good deadline acquisition or won a trade? I think that speaks to what Dom's saying in terms of what they built around him. The Milan Lucic deal was let's get him to play with McDavid. And you've got look at the contracts and the different signings that the Oilers have made in the last 5-6 years. I mean, I don't know if they've won one. And Alan Mitchell, Low Tide, who does stuff for the Oilers for us, he wrote a story about why can't the Oilers win a trade in the Connor McDavid era. And I guess that just comes down to bad GMing. You don't have enough good tradable assets to get a good piece back. I mean, last year we all heard Ken Holland say you can't go all in every year. And so if you're Connor McDavid and you hear the GM of your team say that he's not going to make a big move or not going to go in every year, when are you going to do it? Because now it's not this year. Because now the Vancouver Canucks are 1 point back of you, and I don't even know if they're in a wild card spot right now. You have Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl in their primes. And if you want to loop in someone like Darnell Nurse, they've got pieces, but nothing else. It's truly bizarre to watch this hockey team. I don't get it.
They have the hard part figured out. They have one of the better cores in the league just by virtue of having McDavid and Draisaitl, and even Nurse has been unreal this year after some years where his defensive game was questionable. And for Ken Holland to look at a team that has those pillars at the top and say, we're not going to trade our first round pick this year, we're not there. It's just what are you doing? This is Connor McDavid in his prime. If you're not selling out every year, then you are failing as a GM. And I remember at the time when he was hired, a lot of people were skeptical because he failed as a GM with the Red Wings. He does not seem fit to operate in the cap era. He was incredible as the Red Wings GM when there was no salary cap and he could do whatever he wanted. And the Red Wings were frequently one of the organizations with the highest payroll. And now that there's a cap in place, it's been 15 years. He hasn't figured it out yet.
And how many of those, and Ian and I were talking about this before we went on, how many of those players that were icons for the Red Wings franchise were just really good draft picks by a European scout?
Mm-hmm.
Was that Ken Holland being ooh, I've struck gold? Or was that his European scouting staff being look at this little old Datsyuk guy we found?
Yeah,
or during
or during free agency, oh, I guess we'll sign this future Hall of Famer to add to our 150 million payroll.
Yeah.
Or whatever it was.
Yeah. Okay. But here's what I find really interesting. And Dom, this will serve as a nice little springboard for us to talk about your latest collaboration with Shayna Goldman on The Athletic, which dropped Monday morning, which, last week you talked about the individual NHL player cards, which is really cool. We'll talk about that in a second. But then what you both did was you said, okay, well, now let's look at which teams, if you look at all the players and their value, well, which team is getting like kind of the most value for their dollar in terms of surplus value? This is what I find fascinating is the Edmonton Oilers in your model are actually getting about $100 million worth of value for $71 million of payroll, meaning they're actually, kind of out-kicking the coverage here by about just under $30 million. So explain to me, Dom, when you look at the Oilers, the way that they're constructed, the fact that some of the players seem to be exceeding their cap hit in terms of their value, like, where's this going wrong here?
Well, the difference is that, like, the way we measured it was the market value is based on their projected value. So that ties in with the team having some bad luck and how players should be a little better. Even Connor McDavid, I think he's on pace for like 5.3 wins, and he's projected to be worth 6. Because right now at 5-on-5, the Oilers aren't scoring as much as they should with McDavid on the ice. So that's something that should change. That's something the player cards, I guess, recognize. And you can see if the pace is lower than projections, that means the player is underperforming a bit. So the market value from today's article was based on the projected value. So the Oilers should be around the 10th to 15th best team in the league based on the players they have. It's just they haven't played that way. And some of that is bad luck. Some of that might be bad fit. Some of that might just be that things aren't working this year. I'm not sure, but that's where it should be and not necessarily where they actually are this year. A lot of players have probably played well below what they're actually paid for. And that's the difference between looking at a team's projection and what they're playing at.